UD2 Overview Series. My name is Katie Baker, and I'm part of the Next Gen Corporate Training Team. And this session is going to cover the redesign of the Workflow module. It's important to keep in mind with any of the 5.8 UD2 features, there's going to be both enhancements as well as brand new functionality. Many of these features will be available immediately after upgrading, but some of these enhancements will require additional installation and/or setup before they become available. And it's always important to keep in mind when you upgrade, you want to upgrade a test or a demo environment first and thoroughly test all new functionality against all your current processes and workflows to ensure that everything is working the way you're expecting it to. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the new workflow, keeping in mind that sometimes it's also referred to as the inbox. So what we've done here is we've combined elements of the workflow and the PAQ into one window, and now each section is represented by separate tabs rather than combining all the separate information on one screen. So you'll actually be able to see more information per section because it won't have to share the screen with any other pieces of the workflow. And the sections will include some of the familiar options like clinical tasking, and this is where you're going to be able to view all of your tasks. You'll be able to use categories as filters so that you can actually narrow down your list of tasks by subject matter. You can select a task to view details in the details pane, and you'll also be able to see patient demographic and clinical information next to the details. And you'll also be able to navigate to other areas of the chart directly from the task, like the orders module or an associated template or document. We also still include the appointments in the workflow, but now we have 3 different views. We have the daily view, which is similar to what we currently offer, and you can view the schedule in a list format. We also have the multi-view, where you can view schedules for each provider in a column format and see each appointment in a block of time. You can also see the timeline view, which is basically a view turned on its side, and you see all of the appointment information going in rows across the screen, but also each item is blocked out in periods of time. You'll be able to select an individual appointment and be able to view the details for that appointment, as well as patient demographics and clinical information. And you'll be able to see upcoming appointments from places like the clinical tasking tab as well, so you don't have to navigate to the appointments just to see what exactly is coming up. And we're also going to include the email section, but this is important to keep in mind. If the email is configured, then the section will display as an associated tab. If you do not have email configured, then the tab will actually be skipped. You will not see any option to choose email. And remember that the email is actually your outside email from somewhere that would typically be a server-bound email that you've had added into your EHR inbox. If you do have your email configured, then you'll be able to select your individual email messages and view all the details as if you were reading the message directly from the inbox. It'll also include patient portal messages, although now it is a separate tab. It no longer shares a space with the email like it did before. And it'll display your patient portal messages if the patient portal is installed in the database. If it's not, then you will not see the tab for patient portal. And you will be able to select an individual message to view the details and patient information, but otherwise the rest of the patient portal message functionality is still the same as it has been in previous versions. And then of course we've integrated in the provider approval queue. We've actually kept the existing functionality, but we've integrated it into this one area so that you can have easier access. So that's a total of 5 separate sections, and each of them will be represented by its own separate tab within the inbox. Here's a couple of screenshots before we take a look at things within the application. Here's where you can see the tabs across the top first of all. Anything that's been configured or installed will be available. You can see, for example, the clinical tasking. The top half kind of represents the list of items in the task list. The bottom half is where you can view the details of the message as well as the patient. Here in the appointments, this is an example of the multi-view where you can actually see each provider represented by its own column, and then the appointments will be represented through the timeline that you see listed. Here you can also see the patient portal messages. The inbox for the patient portal is very similar to before. You have your same choices and divided sections for your inbox. And then your PAQ functionality here where you'll be able to view any pending items and still sign off and things of that nature. So we're going to go into the application so we can take a better real-time look here. So of course I can still get to my inbox through accessing the inbox button in my toolbar. And as of now, I can still also get to it by clicking on PAQ because we still have two buttons, but it's going to route us into the same place. So I'm going to go ahead and go to inbox. And you can see that for this database, I do not have patient portal or email configured, but I do have clinical tasking, appointments, and provider approval queue. So those are my three options to navigate to as a user. So here with the clinical tasking, remember that the top half is going to represent the entire list of tasks for this particular user. The bottom half is going to give me more individual task-specific information. Now, before we go into that detail, notice on the left, we've got a category for all tasks, which is something everybody will see. There's a new item added for high priority tasks. Anything that was flagged as high priority will appear here. And then if the end user had any previously created tabs, those will become filter options here where you can look at individual task lists by subject matter. If they didn't currently use the tabs, they'll still be able to create new lists. We now call them filters, but they'll be able to create them as needed. Then you've got your task list to the right. First of all, you'll notice many familiar columns like the due date, the patient's name, the subject, and the description. You might also notice we have some new icons in here to represent all of the different task types within the list. The arrow icon is going to indicate that this was a task sent by me to one or more recipients. Any tasks that have a check mark were tasks that were accepted by me. So it was sent to me and I accepted the task, so it is one that I need to complete. And then I may also have tasks like this where it was basically sent to me, but I have not yet acknowledged it. So it's not necessarily clear if this is a task that I will be completing. So these will replace the clipboard icons that we had. And then you'll also notice these X icons for cases where every single user has declined the task that I sent. So we have the same types of icons, but they are represented by a different picture. So first thing I can do is I can select an individual task, and you'll notice that this details pane will actually change. So I can see the task subject, who it was sent from, what day it was sent, and of course who it was sent to, which would generally be the user that I chose or maybe even my own username. Then the details of the task will depend on what the subject matter is, but I can see things like the due date, the priority, and the status. I can see if there was any kind of a response for this task, plus I can see the actual message right here. Now, depending on the subject matter, some of your tasks will have longer messages than others. Here's an example of a telephone call where we can see all of the details here in the message. So, of course, it is going to depend on what the end user either types in that description or, of course, what gets defaulted from the templates. But the point is that you don't have to open up the task to actually view the details. You can review all of that here in the details pane. And then you have various actions down at the bottom. You can generate a new task, you can remove, you can go to the chart, and you can also go directly to the orders module. Now, in some cases, if this was my task to complete, I also have some additional options. Now there's a reply option, so I can reply to the sender, and I can reassign like we had before. And then again, I can get to the chart and the orders. Now, in addition to that, I can also see the patient's information over here to the right. So we've got demographic details. I can see the template that's associated to the task. I can view their alerts. I can look at their allergy list, problems, diagnoses, and medications. So I can easily review details about the patient even without having to navigate to the chart. And then in addition to reviewing existing task information, when I compose a task, like here, I can create a new EHR task or a PM task. It will actually allow me to compose that message right here in the details pane. So it no longer produces an additional pop-up window. So I can type in the subject. So we'll put in task subject here. I can actually see that it's coming from me and it's being sent with today's date. Then I can choose the recipients and I get my standard task recipients list. So maybe we're going to send this to our clinical staff group. I can pick a due date. Maybe it's due Monday. I can set a priority level. I can even assign it to a category so that if I have any users that like to use the filters, it'll automatically work with their filter list. And then I can free text my description. So it's very easy to compose, and it's a lot like you would do if this was an email message. Now, one last thing, if I want to attach a patient, I need to come all the way over here to the same section where we saw the patient information, and I can do a patient lookup. So it's our standard patient lookup here. We'll take this person, and I can see all that same information, plus I can decide what do I want to attach. Do I want to include a template or a document or an image? I can pick from any of these choices here, including a new option for patient education to be able to attach to any task. And when you choose the option, you'll get the opportunity to browse. And we'll take this one here. So now I can go ahead and send my task, and it'll automatically add that to my inbox queue as long as I'm seeing tasks that are assigned to someone else. Now, in addition to what we've seen, I can also determine tasking preferences by looking at the gear icon at the top left corner. These preferences are similar to what we've had in previous versions, so I can show completed tasks and show removed. I can also show tasks assigned to someone else. I have access to workflow delegates, so I can see who has been assigned as a delegate to me or who I am assigned to. Here's where I can set up my categories and filters. The filter option will be end user specific. The categories are practice specific. In previous versions, setup filters was referred to as setup tabs, so this may be a familiar option. And you can see here that you can create all the different tabs that we have represented over here on the left side of the inbox. And then you connect them to categories to ensure that it kind of files properly when the task is being sent. And I still have the ability to set some preferences where I can color code my tasks and set refresh time frames. I can also determine how things will hide. So none of these settings are actually new to the inbox, but they might be in a slightly different place than what you're used to. We've also got over to the right-hand side the place where I can determine all of the individual delegates that I'm part of in terms of the workflow manager. So this is my inbox, but I can look and see other people as long as I've been assigned as a delegate. So I can easily switch between those users. So that is no longer located under the preferences. It's got its own drop-down list for easy access. And then the last thing I'll point out under clinical tasking is that we are used to seeing appointments kind of side by side with our tasking list. So you'll also be able to see the upcoming appointments, and it'll show you about 7 different appointments here on this list, and you'll be able to see the status along with any color coding that they might be used to, and then of course the time and any room information, so they can easily see their appointments without having to navigate to the next section. Now, speaking of appointments, when you're ready to look at the entire appointment list, you can navigate to your next tab over, and this is our appointments view. So first of all, on the left side, we've got 3 different choices for appointment views. This is called the daily view, and you can see the time, the room, the patient's name and subject, and if there's a reason included, a patient tracking status, as well as the resource for the booked appointment. And then you'll notice that your patient tracking information here will be reflective of what you currently use. It still matches the patient tracking template. The color-coded options will still match what you chose in your settings. None of that will have to be redone upon upgrading. It'll carry over. And I can also see a calendar view also to the left so that I can easily see which date is selected. And I can change dates if I want to see other appointments. Now, also from the daily view, I can select an appointment and view the details in the details pane, as well as patient information over here. Now, I can also update appointment information, which if you have our practice management system, you'll likely do any type of update through the practice management, but you have the access to it. You can also navigate to the patient's chart, and you can navigate to the patient's orders module. And then finally, you can also double-click an appointment still if you wanted to access their chart directly from the inbox. Now the other view, called multi-view, this is going to show me each provider that I've chosen for my resources as a column, and then I will see all of the appointments in blocked out times here. But it still honors the appointment status information as well as color coding, just like the previous view. And I can select an individual appointment and still view the details and patient demographic and clinical information. Now, the other thing about this particular view is you're only seeing it in about a 2-hour increment. The daily view is going to show you the entire list for the day, but this is going to be just 2 hours at a time. So you may have to scroll through to see either previous appointments or ones that are upcoming. The timeline view is very similar to the multi-view. It's kind of turned on its side here, so you can see that we've got a provider listed on the left, and then the appointments stretch across the screen, and it's blocked out in areas of time. I can see 2 provider schedules at once, and then I can scroll through to see other people. So all 3 of these views are going to have similar functionality. So again, I can select the appointment and view the details. I can double click to get to the chart, and I can always see status and color coding information. And all 3 views will allow me to see multiple schedules at one time. So it's important to notice at the top right corner, it says that I'm viewing multiple schedules, and I can use the drop down to select all the resources that I would like to view. The appointment preferences are going to be listed in the same gear icon that we saw for clinical tasking, only they'll be now related to appointments. And I've got the same choices as before. I can do the canceled appointment filter, I can view by resource or provider, and I can get to the preferences where I can create colors for my various appointment statuses. So again, all of those settings that you previously had will carry over into your new inbox. You will not have to create these preferences again, but you will get to them in potentially a slightly different place than you are used to. And then I also have the provider approval queue connected here to my inbox. I'm going to go ahead and log in. This is just here to show you that if you still have the login feature, you'll have to currently do that to get into the PA queue, just like before. The functionality of the PA queue has not changed, so I am able to still see all of the various items here listed in my PA queue. And I still have the preview pane to the right where I can kind of review and read the information. And of course, the intention of the PA queue is that you're going to sign off or accept the items that are in the PA queue. I can also reject and reassign and send tasks directly from here. So the layout or the look and feel might look a little bit different, but the overall functionality will be the same. The first thing I want to point out is that I can switch my delegates over here in the top right, same place I went for appointment resources and for clinical tasking delegates. So I can change to a different provider and see their list of items in the PA queue. And of course I can select based on pending or rejected items, and I can review any history items like we've previously had. One thing that is a little bit different is that the action buttons for the PA queue were moved from the very bottom of the list to actually being underneath the actual item that you're viewing. So here I have a lab result selected, and I can see the accept, reject, reassign, and to-do buttons. And then chart, which was previously called open, is available. And then I have a new button called full screen, which will allow me to take the preview information and pull it into a full screen view so I can maybe read it a little bit easier. And then I simply click the full screen button to return back to the original PAQ view. So your action buttons have just been slightly moved from below the list of items to being below the preview itself. So whether it's a document or an image or you have your lab results, you'll be able to see your action buttons in the same place. And then down at the very bottom of the list is where you can see the practice that you're logged into, and I can also set filters for the items that I'm viewing in the PAQ. So here I can checkbox the items that I want to see and then filter things away accordingly. So maybe I just want to see orders, for example. And when it refreshes, I only get the orders items. So we had that before, but it was represented through an individual checkbox for each item. Now we've combined it into a list so that it didn't take up as much room. And then finally, you are used to seeing the options button as part of one of the action items in this toolbar, but we've moved the PAQ options to be more consistent with what the other tabs will have. So at the top left corner, you have your gear button, and you can click to get to your PAQ preferences. And here you will have access to the general, custom rules, and quick comments. We did not make any changes in UD2 for any of these preference options, but the place where you locate them will be a little different. So those are going to be the three main items: the clinical tasking, appointments, and the provider approval queue. I'm going to switch to a different database here really quick and point out that I do have the patient portal set up in another environment. So I wanted to show you that if I had an inbox here that had the patient portal, I will see a tab for that. And you've still got your same sections for each of the individual portal items. I don't have any items in my inbox to view, but the list would be over here on the right, and you can actually view the details down at the bottom. So it's still very, very similar to what you have for your current patient portal messages. The actual workflow and functionality will still be the same, but we've allowed it to become kind of a bigger screen view as well as its own tab, no longer sharing that email format. So you'll probably be able to at least see things a little bit easier. So those are the four main items for the workflow. Again, everything is accessed through the actual inbox button or even the PAQ button. And that concludes everything for our workflow session. Thank you guys very much for attending.